TKO Boxing with Sherry Abbasi, and today I'm joined once again by Mr. Jay Chaudhry. Jay, assalamu alaikum, bro, and welcome back. How have you been?
Walaikum assalam, brother. I've been good. How was the Saudi trip this time around?
Yeah, it was really good, man. It's starting to get very busy there. We're seeing a lot more people sort of from different backgrounds there. People are starting to, understand what Saudi is about, and the boxing events are really starting to open that up to a lot of people.
Yeah,
I mean, since we last spoke, obviously I went to the Day of Reckoning in December. I was there for Joshua versus Ngannou, which was a great event, and then I
sure.
popped out for Fury versus Usyk as well, which is a massive event, big moment in the sport. So obviously, since the last time we spoke, we've had a number of big events in Saudi, and we can see that, over previous years, we've heard people say, even Eddie Hearn himself previously, when he'd had one or two events in Saudi prior to this last Riyadh season push, he said we get a lot of interest from so-called princes and top people from
Yeah,
countries in the Middle East, and we never know what's real and what's not. But
yeah.
what is it about this time around that's so different that the Saudis have really made a big push at the sport of boxing? And what is the sort of the feeling that you're getting about the sport and where it's headed, and Saudi's vision?
I think a headline statement would be if you are an American boxing fan right now, you should be excited for what's about to happen. So, as a boxing fan, you should be excited. However, as an American, you should be concerned because there are some concerns that date back, well beyond some of our times in our lives, which dates back to early Saudi American politics and history. And I don't really want to make this sound like a history lesson to the boxing fans listening, but I think it's so important for today's boxing fan, especially in today's current state that we're in, to educate themselves a little bit on history and geopolitical movements between US and Saudi. There might be allies on paper, but both nations have two completely different outlooks on their country values, morale, ethics, and where they see their country, nation, and community in the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And a good way to do this would be simply just by looking up, past track records, past collaborations that they've done. This is going to be not the first time that a Saudi company or PIF, Public Investment Fund, has taken over an American sport. We've seen it happen with Live Golf recent years, where there was a giant uproar in terms of like, why is a Saudi company coming in to take over, a predominantly Americanized sport, which is golf. And then as of last week, they injected another $1.5 billion into PGA. So, and it's not just sports, right? One of the things that people get really confused about when they look at Sheikh Turkey, who's a wonderful guy, of course, is that they probably just see him as the highness, the prince, the king. They don't really understand that he comes from a monarchy. They don't really understand that there's about 20 different ministers who work underneath the kingship's royal family, and each one of these ministers has their own goals that they have to hit by a certain year. And in this case, they're promoting the year 2030, which is Saudi's new, revolution of coming back to the party kind of country, where they're going to be opening up tourism and a lot more initiatives on that front. But let's stick to the topic at hand, which is how much companies in American sports teams that they're acquiring. They've done golf, they're doing boxing now. They've already done NASCAR. They're moving into different areas such as concerts, live events, Oscars, Emmys, and it doesn't just stop there. Now they're getting into music, they're getting into films, motion picture. So for them to invest the rumored $4 billion, let's say $5 billion, into the sport of boxing to bring every promoter underneath one umbrella, it's equivalent as to a millionaire spending $5,000 on lunch. And that's a true fact. I looked it up. So when you look at a millionaire spending $5,000 on lunch, you might be looking at him from an outside and be like, what the fuck? Is this guy crazy? But to the millionaire, he's like, bro, I make this in a fucking day. I made more money walking to the restaurant than what I'm spending here. And the
Yeah.
same thing goes there. You're talking about trillions and trillions of dollars. And we'll get into more of what the reason behind this move is. But that's essentially the headline statement that I have there.
So, like you said, that there's obviously a much larger sort of end goal, and the steps that they're taking to get there it's only going to get bigger and bigger. Like you said, not just on a boxing front, but on a purely entertainment front as well. Music, boxing, golf, football. Ronaldo being there, and all the other big names that they brought in the last year and a half as well. Of course, on the topic of boxing and what they've done there, and the conversations that are currently happening. I mean, I'm not sure if you saw yesterday, for example, we had Terence Crawford, Jared Anderson, and Hamza Shiraz, who's a British boxer who fought there on the 5v5 middleweight mandatory challenger for the WBC title. He, all three of them have been given 1 year Riyadh season ambassador roles. I don't know if you saw that. What is the sort of plan? What can you see that sort of benefiting, and how does that work? And what does that add to this whole Riyadh?
They're taking the wheels off American companies, right? So slowly, it's like they're stripping a sports car apart. America has always been a predominantly main focus center of the world, as you could say. So the picture of them having a nice little sports car, Saudi's always been the one making the parts for the sports car. And now what they're doing is they're taking the parts back and they're bringing it back home. So they're stripping away the sports car. And how do you do that? By, essentially, it's not a bad thing when people do this. You see in entertainment all the time. You pay for ambassador programs. You bring more light back to your nation. So we leased this car out. I'm using the car metaphor again, but we built you this amazing car with these amazing things that's going on through our partnership through oil and money, and now we're going to take everything back from you guys bit by bit. By the time this is all done in 2030, America will be left on bricks, as they say. When they do all your wheels and tires, you're left on bricks. That's what's going to happen there. And the proof is in the pudding, because just 2 days ago, Saudi announced that they're going to stop using the U.S. dollar for the trading. Right now, that's been a 50-year deal. So, like, if you are a boxing fan who's into researching BoxRec all the time, spend some time researching exactly what's happening behind closed doors here. There's a reason Saudi's moving the way they do, and they're moving with a chip on their shoulder. So, once again, as a boxing fan, you should be happy, because you are going to get the fights you want. There's not any question in my mind that the fight's not going to happen. But as an American patriot, as a citizen, you should be concerned, because what these guys are doing in Saudi is no joke. Right? They're taking power back and they're bringing it back into the east side of the world. Right now, the Western power has been here for so long. It's slowly transitioning back over to the east with initiatives like this, like buying out popular properties such as sports, music, entertainment, films, media, communication. And in sports, boxing makes up a fucking grain of salt, if you could, on the grand scheme of things. Because, like I said, there's 21 ministers on the kingship parliament, on the minister board, of the Saudi monarchy. Each one of them has their own initiative. Turkey was positioned to handle sports, particularly boxing. So he's having a great time doing it, of course. He's being loved by the community. But there are going to be some heavy consequences moving forward, and heavy discussions that, American community needs to start having amongst each other.
And to sort of push back on that, or touch on that a little bit, what would you say those discussions are that the American people will have?
I'll stick to boxing, because I really don't want to get political. So let's talk about boxing. The promoters are going to have some real hard conversations as to where they will go next. Because so far, Eddie Hearn loves to be the center of attention. Oscar loves to be the center of attention. Bob Arum has a very huge track record of being America's top, most beloved promoter. He goes back to Muhammad Ali days. Al Heyman, of course, is fairly new in the spectrum of the promoters I'm talking about. Or him versus Bob, more or less. But all these guys are going to have to end up finally sitting together in a room together, which has never happened before in the history of boxing. We've never seen all 5 promoters sit across the desk to have a valuable conversation, because they always thought that they were good, that the money was always good, the advertiser was always there, the pay-per-view dollars were always coming. But now all that's changing, as we can see in the world of sports and economics, that Western society is literally on the verge of collapsing and having one of the biggest downfalls in the history of their nation. Now we have an entity coming in to kind of help out. They're going to have some really difficult discussions as to, like, what is considered a prize fighter now? What is considered a $5 million payday? Does that guy really deserve that? Because now that everything's going digital, we have companies like, ComScore and VideoAmp coming out, who measures and tracks data fairly well. Then you have Saudi's data team that's doing their shit really, really well. And then you have companies like Jabber versus have you heard of Jabber? Jabber just came out there.
Use that,
fucking fantastic company. I just talked to the owner last week. Great conversation. He's in competition directly with CompuBox, who's like a post-emitter company that just still counts boxing based on a ticker. Like, all this stuff is old school. It needs to turn new school, and Saudi's the way to go about it. So Saudi most likely is going to acquire companies like Jabber and have them be their official data collecting punch stat company, simply because CompuBox hasn't kept up, because they're a dinosaur age company. And similarly, all these promoters who are dinosaurs are going to turn into glorified booking agents. And I want to expand on what I mean by that, because so far in the world of boxing, people like Eddie, Oscar, Bob, yeah, they were promoting in old school sense. They had billboards up to fucking wazoo and all this stuff in the major cities. As of recent, Eddie's been really strong on social media. Ball's been really strong on social media, and I named those two particularly because I've had lengthy discussions in terms of the content strategies with both teams. Um, but now that we're going into an age where we have a new entity coming in, they're going to have their own way of doing things. Everything is going to start changing. You're going to have a shift in power. You're going to have a shift in who deserves what and what roles they deserve. So a guy like Eddie, who might be a prominent matchroom boxing talking head, he might get kind of, sweep to the back room, as they could say, because somebody else is going to start doing that job for him, or they might keep him there as just the mouthpiece for matchroom. Right. So there's a lot of moving parts, but these are
Mm.
difficult discussions that the American people need to start having in boxing.
Yeah. Like you said, this is very much a boxing conversation, the last part. And that's what we're touching on. Would it be fair to say, based on the things you sort of touched on there, that Saudi is looking to sort of revolutionize boxing and the way it's all run in comparison to how it has been for the last 30, 40 plus years in terms of, like you said, for example, Jabba using the technology they're using in comparison to maybe a CompuBox, even just the way the shows are now set up where the fights are getting made. Obviously, previously we've seen politics, whether it's network, deals that certain fighters can only fight on certain networks. Fights aren't being made over however many years, but in the last 2 years, we've seen that sort of shift. And especially now in the last 6 to 9 months, we've seen Saudi come in and, everyone's happy to work together, like you said. And how much does that impact the future of boxing? And that can surely only be seen as a positive for the fans. I don't know what that means for the ecosystem in the long run, but what would you say that means for the sport of boxing as a sort of business?
Yeah, I think it's going to completely revolutionize the sport. We're going to move into an era where I've tweeted about in the past where pay-per-view is not going to mean so much to Saudi because they already have a huge funnel system of income anyway. They're going to be more concerned about commodity fighters, such as hot off the press fighters. Hamza Shiraz, you mentioned, he's going to be, I can picture Hamza being a very much a favorite of Turkey. Because he's a good-looking kid, Pakistani, Muslim, he fits the criteria. But not that I'm saying being a Muslim or Pakistani matters in the sport of boxing, but I'm saying there are going to be favoritisms, and they work in favoritisms here right now as well. Absolutely. How many companies would fucking run after Canelo's like ass? You know what I mean? So there are going to be some favorite fighters, no matter what. But it's going to completely revolutionize the way we pay fighters, the way that they are given fights, the way that they are hired. You better have a huge social media presence. You better be content strategy. You better have a content strategy coming in as a fighter, somebody who's smart and a great fighter at the same time. They're going to start looking for sharp-minded fighters, not just in the ring but outside the ring, because at the end of the day, the goal is to bring attention to Saudi. They're not going to want boring fighters just because you can swing a little bit. That's not going to work for them. They're going to want somebody who's actually enthusiastic and who they can make an ambassador for Saudi as well. So it is going to be a political movement involved. Of course it is. Everything's politics, right? But I have faith in Sheikh Turkey because he is a hardcore boxing fan at heart. That he might, not might. I think he will cater to the boxing fans because so far he has delivered on everything we've asked for. One of the things I do want to bring up, though, that's interesting, is from a latest article from NY Fights that just released. So, they were kind of just picking on the fact that, and it's not just NY Fights. There's a lot of undertone going on in the boxing world about the human rights aspect of Saudi. And I think that's so unfair coming from a nation like America, who already has fucking several and dozens of hundreds of problems that they should be looking at their own country first before judging another country who's up in equity, who has close to zero crime rate, whose healthcare system is top notch. The last killing that happened was probably by accident. The education system is good. Like I said, the healthcare system is top notch. The job security is top notch. When you work for a Saudi company, they give you a house and a car just for starting. So I think the fans in America who are worried about the human rights part of it, need to start focusing on their own country first, fix what they're going on, and then show somebody like Saudi how it's done. In terms of the women's rights aspect of this, I think that's a laughable debate as well, considering the fact there's been two major Olympic athletes who are female coming out of Saudi. The names were what was the name? Sarah Attar and who's the other one? I gotta look this up. 1 second. Sarah Attar was one, and Dania Abu Talib. Yeah, she was a American Saudi. She represented Saudi Arabia in the 2012 Olympics. Like, come on, bro. If Saudi was really against women's athletes, women's rights, they wouldn't have national track stars performing at the Olympics and brand ambassadors coming out of Saudi, right? We got to stop looking at Saudi from a lens of history and look at what they're doing now. Not that I'm a fan of what I'm about to say next. I'm not a fan of this one I'm about to say next. But they're also going to start building casinos and alcohol spots for tourists. So they're already thinking ahead in terms of like how are we going to please these ruckus, chaotic Americans when they finally come to Saudi? How can we
Yeah.
feed these guys and make them happy? And it's not really something to be proud about, by the way, that you drink and gamble like this. You know what I mean? But Saudi knows that
Absolutely.
these are activities that Americans like and the Westerners like. So let's
Mm.
put them away, far, far away from Mecca and Medina, where they can do all this bullshit, devil-ridden activities, and they'll have fun while they're here for fight week. And I'm speaking loosely on this because that's exactly what's happening here. But
Mm.
in terms of talking about human rights, as an American, focus on your own country first. Fix the problems that you have before you start looking at another country's like shortcomings. And the shortcomings that they have are through their faith and through their history of being a country that they are today. And they're evolving each day.
100%. I think sort of just to touch on what you said there about the human rights aspect, it was only like 4 or 5 years ago when I think AJ fought Ruiz out there, and that was a big fight. And everyone's like, "Oh my god, the heavyweight title is going to Saudi. This can't happen. Their human rights record is this, that, and the other." But those very same people, without mentioning their names, those very same people are
Yep.
now at every event. And they're championing Saudi, and they love Saudi now because they know this is the spot and this is where the work is. So it's all about what fits the narrative at a certain time as well, isn't it? So it's about
Yeah, I mean, you've been to
everyone.
Saudi. I mean, you've been to Saudi more than I have. Last time I went was like 5 years ago. This is before Riyadh season took place. How's the vibe been like? Like tell me what it's been like.
Honestly, so a lot of people that I knew who had been to Saudi and maybe somewhere like Qatar or the UAE were like saying, Saudi is very different. It's not as maybe flamboyant, like you said. For example, the casinos, the drinking, things
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that
yeah,
you can do in
yeah.
places like Dubai. I've been to Dubai before. That is a very different vibe. But Riyadh, when I went there, I went in December. I've been in March, and I went in May as well. So a few weeks back. The vibe is very much of a place that it's the next place to be. It's up and coming, and it will be essentially the next sort of Vegas spot. Essentially, you know what I mean? Which what people have been saying about Dubai for the last 10, 15 years. This is the Vegas of the Middle East. I think Riyadh will
Yeah,
start to rival that. Maybe not as extreme to the extent that Dubai has gotten to, where it's ridden with the problems that it's got, which I'm not going to say, but I don't think Riyadh will get to that level, but it's definitely going to be a lot more open to the world, if that makes sense. Like you said, very much pushing it towards that Vision 2030, where it's open for tourism and the next hub of entertainment, and every big company is opening up there. Even just conversations I had with people in passing, taxi drivers and hotel workers about, if you look on this road, there's a big office being built for Microsoft. If you look on this other side of the city, there's another big bank opening, HSBC. Obviously, these companies all have, places all around the world, but the fact that Riyadh is now that next hub, that next big project for the next 10 years, that that you can very much tell when you get there that this is going to be that type of place.
yeah,
Super
yeah.
special.
And I'm
People of
wondering.
every background now
Yeah,
out there as well.
yeah. No, no. I'm wondering, and thank you for that because I'm also wondering with all that you just said, and them acquiring all these American companies, you could say. I don't think there's been much government interference with the acquisition of any of those launch of any of those companies, but I do feel like there's a chance that there would be some government interference with the likelihood of Saudi buying an entire fucking sport out of America and taking it away. I do feel like there's going to be compliance issues. There's going to be cultural differences in the matter because at the end of the day, you are going to be taking away. They're not going to do what they're doing with Live Golf, which is nitpicking and taking their sticks away one at a time. This is going to involve like heavy duty compliance issues. The government of America is most likely, if they have the time for it, between all the other shit that they got going on, to somebody needs to look at what's going on and be like, oh, wait a second, what's happening here? Who's buying boxing? Who's buying all these promoter companies? And although boxing promotion companies are privately held, there is still going to be significant impact to like the shareholders of the company, the cultural differences, and like they're going to have a lot of like say in the matter in terms of like, are they going to keep American rights here? Are they going to keep our traditional values in the sport? Are they still going to raise the American flag at the events? There's going to be a lot of patriotism, like debates happening if this happens. So it's an interesting conversation.
So yeah, like you said, the conversation itself, we could talk about this also for hours because there's so many different angles you can come at it from. From the basis of the American promoters, for example, your Oscar De La
Sure.
Hoya's, Bob Arum, and Al Heyman, for example, someone who's been in the business world for many, many years. What would if you were in their shoes right now, what would your sort of perception be, and what sort of angle do you look at it and say, okay, these guys are potentially talking about a boxing league of sorts, right? That was the most recent thing we had 3 or 4 days ago, and that $4 to $5 billion deal that we're talking about. What is that initial sort of? Is that more of like a shock, or is it like a we need to
No,
be on defense here, or is it a let's talk about it, let's discuss it,
let's
this
talk
makes
about
sense?
it. Let's talk about it. I mean, many of these. I'll say this openly. I think PBC is bleeding. Okay, so they're definitely going to need. They're definitely going to need like a whiff of fresh air where they say, "What? Finally, we got somebody fucking saving us." Top Rank is in a good position. They're in profit. Golden Boy, I'm not sure how their books look. Matchroom's in profit, right? So even though Eddie Hearn got $1 billion and blew it. Actually, let's talk about this too, because I just mentioned this on a podcast yesterday, but I'll repeat myself. There's this whole thing about Eddie blowing $1 billion, right?
Yeah,
When he was with DAZN. And the same
which is
thing
not
went for
true.
Al Heyman. The same thing went for Al Heyman with Waddle and Reed. I don't know if you know that story. But so
Yeah,
basically,
PVC back in 2015. Yeah,
back in 2015, NBC, yes.
yes,
So let's take a look at both characters and let's evaluate both. And this will answer
yeah,
your question in the end. You'll see. So you have Eddie Hearn who's given $1 billion, and the rumor is he fucking blew it. He has no idea what he's doing with it. DAZN is in a bad spot. They're just like a shit company, shit overall brand, whatever. Then you got Heyman, who people generally say he was great for American because he bought boxing back to free cable, which was fine. How long did that last? The deal on NBC? A couple of
3
years.
years.
Okay. Okay, cool. What do you do after that? He's platform hopping at this point, and eventually the free to boxing promise stopped along the way somehow. It just vanished and disappeared, and nobody has brought it up since. Okay, so let's leave that there on pause. Now let's go to Eddie. He had his $1 billion. He's put it into what's called a sunk cost, which I explained on my podcast yesterday. I'll explain it again to those viewers watching now. Sunk cost generally means you put that $1 billion uh, investment that you have upfront, and you spend it on intangible assets such as marketing, distribution, advertising, platform content, or athletes, or ventures, or shoulder content. All eight, which I just mentioned, were invested in heavily in the beginning. You started seeing Matchroom content on YouTube and DAZN. You started seeing documentaries, it wasn't a lot, but it was some. And then you started seeing all these new fighters getting signed, and then you could see it. You could see it in his walk, in his charm, and in the way he used to promote his events. The staging got better, the lighting got better, so you could see the money going back into the sport through Matchroom.
Yeah,
Not to mention that billions of dollars, now that we're in 2024, also accumulates, which is the most important part, which is the audience acquisition side to what I'm talking about, which is for the last 6 years, DAZN and Eddie very sophisticatedly have been measuring and tracking audiences, boxing fans, with their IP tracking, with their social media tracking, with their viewing habits, with their retention rates. These are all terms used in our world in digital space, where we can measure the KPI of certain events, right? So they've been measuring all of these different data sources through preliminary resources that they've invested in, and now we're in 2024, and DAZN is the front runner to be the official streaming partner should this deal happen, because they're the only app out. They've only been in business for 6 years. One could make a case, well, why wouldn't they want to deal with Amazon though? Yeah, they probably could, but Amazon doesn't really have the boxing crowd yet in their hands.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't care about the 265 million subscribers that they have. I can give two fucks less about that. How many of them are watching the boxing? Well, they haven't released any numbers on the Canelo fight, or any number on the first fight, which was, I forgot that fight, what it was.
Fundora versus Zoo.
Fundora
Keith Lemon
versus
pulled
Zero.
out, didn't he? Yeah, because of the injury.
Keith Lemon pulled out, yeah. And now we have Tank Davis coming up. And Tank, yeah, he's not much of an attraction without a really good dance partner. And Frank Martin, nobody knows him outside his neighborhood, so we can't count that. So DAZN is in the front runner for this, right? And then you have like ESPN Plus. They have a very good chance. But once again, it goes back to the political stuff I was talking about at the beginning. Would Saudi want to do business with an American company and give them fucking rev dollars?
No.
Trust me, they got a bone to pick with America, bro.
Yeah, yeah.
They have
yeah.
a very big bone to pick with America. They want to leave these guys fucking butt naked on the street in a few years, right? And I say that in a very humble manner because I just see the way that the proxy wars are going right now. America is supporting Israel. Saudi just announced anybody who supports Israel is not a friend of ours. So what do you think is happening, bro? Like this is just news I'm just reading out to you that was recent, right? There's a proxy war happening that U.S. is part of, and they're backing Israel. And now you have somebody in boxing like Saudi coming in to buy American properties. He's coming from that mentality. He's not coming to feed an American company. He's not coming to feed ESPN. If anything, he's going to fuck with DAZN because they're European and They hang out together. You understand what I'm saying? So there's a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
moving parts. There's a lot of moving parts in this. There's a lot of geopolitical plate tectonics that are moving as well. It's going to cause a lot of earthquakes. Uh, not physically, but you know what I mean. It's going to cause rumble
Yeah.
in different industries. So that's my elongated answer to your question there. What's going to happen with all these promoters when shit hits the fan? They're going to, some are going to find a way easy out to get bought out, take the money, and just retire. And some of them might want to stick around for the ride.
Yeah. And I suppose when we're talking about the angle that the way it makes boxing look and the way it's going to push the sport forward in the tech space, for example, the things that you talk about and the things that you understand probably more than anyone I know personally. Years and years ago, I remember I've seen your tweets and things that you've pointed out. Oh, I said this then, and then I said that then. What was it back then that made you predict what you predicted for things like DAZN and the prediction that there will be a big player, i.e. Saudi now, who will come in and try to push, do something with boxing and sort of tie it in with the streaming piece. What was it that you saw, that the foresight 5 or 6 years ago, that DAZN and Eddie Hearn and people that will be able to push it forward to where it's at now?
Well, there's a couple of milestones in my predictions. My predictions in 2017 came because I was already doing YouTube series at the time, and I was already producing original content for independent platforms like Hulu and Roku and YouTube original series. And I saw the amount of tractions that videos were getting. And I saw people like Jake Paul and Logan Paul before they got into boxing. I saw their vlog channels that were getting millions of views. My nephew actually introduced me to Logan Paul and Jake Paul through a YouTube clip. And I was like, okay, this is like real traction. These are like thousands of fucking kids watching this stuff. And
Yeah.
so and I realized that, hey man, everybody's moving away from cable now. Like, it's official. My nephew's not gonna watch anything on cable. So that was my first intuition in terms of, we need like if boxing's gonna or sports gonna grow, I think sports is all gonna go to streaming. But there isn't really a streaming guy yet. That's what. So when DAZN got announced already, I was like, that's them right there. And I read their company bio. I read their portfolio of all the executives with their experience and their backgrounds. I had an initial call with DAZN. That's a side conversation. I was a front runner for one of the positions there. I didn't take it at the time.
Oh,
It's
well,
cool though.
okay.
Yeah, but I ended up consulting them on a few of their initiatives. But yeah, I always rooted for them because I knew that these guys, if they did what they were going to do, they were going to be great, and they have been doing exactly that. And then my second milestone came from simply just watching what the Saudis were doing with Live, with independent sports, right? Because major leagues are NFL, NBA, MLB, and NHL. You can't really touch that, right? You can't really touch those. Like, you're talking about billions of dollars of investors and investment money and community shareholders, public companies, all that shit. But then you got a really cool line of sports which are not really owned by anybody: NASCAR, golf, boxing, tennis. Right? What else is there? Probably some. I'm probably missing something there. But there's a small little group of independent sports which is not ran by anybody in Saudi. I can fucking buy all this shit and bring it over to Saudi, and I'm going to build stadiums and race courses and courts and fields and gyms and pools to do this because I got the money for it.
But you know what you said just then about bring it all to Saudi. Obviously,
Yeah,
from a location perspective, they're going to put on shows all around the world, which is what they're saying.
they
But
will.
of course, for
Riyadh
them, it
season
is.
is supposed to. Yeah, I'm sorry to cut you off there, but you're right on the right track. They're supposed to promote Riyadh season. But yeah,
Yeah.
go on. Finish your line of sentences there, please. Go ahead.
What I was going to sort of touch on was in agreement with what you're saying. So they're going to do a worldwide tour, effectively showing this is what we can do. But the end result is still to bring it back to the biggest fights being at the Kingdom Arena in Riyadh. That we want
Yeah,
the
and the
payoff,
biggest
basically. Yeah.
and the biggest races and the biggest tournaments and the
Yes.
biggest Olympics. It's everything. It's not just boxing.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
So no, you're absolutely right. They're putting on the first international card or tennis quad for this September. August or September was it? Sorry,
August 3rd.
August 3rd. And you know what? I have a feeling. I just know how Saudis work. And I know Sheikh how he works. I mean, remember, you talk about a clean cut guy, right? Coming to LA. Have you been to LA before?
No, I've only been to Vegas.
It's a fucking nightmare. The homeless
Okay.
crisis is crazy. There's garbage everywhere in LA. And I live in Toronto. I mean, it's not as bad as LA though, dude. Like, Toronto's still, we're clean here. We're still Canadian at the
Yeah.
end of the day. We look out for each other. But in
Yeah.
America, bro, it's a cesspool of just junk right now, particularly in LA. So I've been feeling that, knowing that this clean cut sheikhs are gonna walk in with the thobes and get the thobes dirty on the road and be like, yo, what the fuck is this? Like, this is a one and done. We might just do one in Vegas, but we're not coming back to this shithole because like our
Okay.
Islamically we call it our deen or iman. It's not there, right?
Yeah.
They're not gonna like the atmosphere there. They're going to think it's not for them. And we're, you know what? Let's just bring the main card back to Saudi, or we'll do it in New York, or we'll do it in Vegas, or we'll do it in Atlantic City. You know, we'll do one in. They'll pick really cool spots to do it in, but they're going to go away from like this whole narrative of like every fight has to be in America. They're going to go. They're going to go host. They're going to go host an event in Turkey, Istanbul, Azerbaijan. They're going to go to Spain. They're going to go to Italy. They're going to go to Australia, and it's all going to be called Riyadh season. So every fucking country that sees this happening, they'll come back and visit Saudi, and that's all they're looking for. They're looking for a few people to come back every year to tour Saudi and bring in their dollars and investment dollars in there, and they're going to win in the end.
Yeah, and I think Frank Warren did an interview last week. It's more of a passing comment, but it's interesting to see if this is actually has any legs. He said about Zhilei Zhang, the Chinese boxer. They said that they're trying to have some conversations, and Riyadh season are on board to have conversations about putting on an event at the Bird's Nest in Beijing, the Olympic Stadium, for the 2008 Olympics. Which again, Zhang is 41, so if they don't do it now, they're never going to do it. I mean, he's come and sort of gone out of his prime age essentially. But Riyadh season, if they did that, that could be a massive statement for a place like China as well, which was always, especially by America, for example, if we go back to politics again, it's very much an enemy or somewhere that's slandered and not given any credence.
Look, I'm going to drop a key word right here. We can cut this out at another time because it is going to come true. Pay attention to what's happening in the world of BRICS. You know what BRICS is, right? Brazil, Russia, China, and now Saudi Arabia is part of it. There's no America in BRICS. There's no United States in BRICS. So all these countries just listed, they're going to be the hosting capital of the world for all these major sporting, concerts, music events, and like everything you can name is going to start happening down there through BRICS, through the BRICS alliance. The American dollar is falling. They're in an economic fucking downfall. The society is not in a really good place right now with what's going on there. They're not in a good light with this whole Israeli-Palestine war. Their culture is at a fucking standstill when it comes to just camaraderie and people understanding each other. Saudi looks at all this stuff, and China looks at all this stuff. Brazil looks at all this stuff. All the money, power nations of the world. I'm not looking at America as a fucking, saving grace anymore like they used to. Right? Every empire collapses, and God help who's next.
Yeah. And I think, like you said about earlier, about it's not just a boxing thing. This is a multifaceted thing. It
is. I was trying to keep this boxing related as much as I could, but it's so hard when you know what's happening behind the scenes, and that's why I'm just begging boxing fans, like, just do a little bit of research, find out for yourself what is happening in the world outside my little bubble in the United States. Half of these boxing fans, bro, besides traveling to Vegas and LA for a fight, they don't have a passport. They've never been outside of America to see what the other cultures are like. What are nations doing and building? What kind of communities are they creating? What kind of families are being constructed here? What kind of healthcare systems have they developed here after 50 years of engineering, right? And then go back to LA and tell me that you guys have it good, So guys like you and I, alhamdulillah, we're blessed. We're well-traveled, well-cultured. We see the world differently with a different eye. But as a boxing fan, I'm very excited. Even if I wasn't a Riyadh season fan, I'd be like, fuck, you know the fights I want? I'm okay at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And just sort of finish on this note, if you like, Jay.
Yes.
This conversation that they have essentially started about the boxing league / UFC type of brackets and fighters in weight divisions all fighting each other under one banner. Do you think it's actually possible to do that in boxing the way boxing is? As fragmented as it's been with all the different deals.
Yeah, of course. I think that's what the ultimate goal that Sheikh's doing is. He's going to take the UFC model and just inject it into his new company. I wonder what it's going to be called. That would be interesting. But whatever the name is, it has to be a universal name. You can't just have Beyond Boxing something. It has to be a universal, like World Championship Boxing Series. Well, that's already been done, WBSS, right?
Yeah.
It'll be something like that, like World Championship Boxing. Something cool, and it should be UFC all around. 200 fighters in all different weight divisions fight each other. And I believe they're all going to be female boxers. I think that right now they're just starting with the men to see how it's all going to work out. Right now, there's no female superstar besides Serrano and Katie Taylor who can even make noise. So for them to introduce two female, it's going to look worse than not introducing them.
Yeah.
Right, and I can see why they made that decision.
So in your opinion, this is a very strong possibility that this can actually happen, and they'll make
it is going to happen. It is going to happen. The only way that the deal is going to break is that the promoters are not aligned with this. That's the only reason the deal is not going to happen. Otherwise, the $5 billion investment to make this happen is nothing. It's not going to be a financial worry.
And in your opinion, if the promoters weren't aligned to do this, would they be idiots or are they making a right move?
No, this should be. I mean, if I was a promoter, I just ask for a job out of the assignment, or I'd retire. So if I'm into boxing and I'm really passionate about it, like Eddie would probably take the money and still be the face of Matchroom.
Because he can talk and he enjoys that.
You can tell he's passionate. He's gonna be like, "What the
Yeah.
fuck am I gonna do with $1 billion, bro? Like,
Yeah.
I'm already a multi-billionaire. I already have private jets and Ferraris. So like,
Yeah.
yeah, I want to stay. I want to just be Matchroom. Like, cool. Oscar, who knows? He might just fucking retire and be like, peace. Finally, I got my exit. Al Heyman would definitely be out because he's old. He's old anyway. And Leonard Ellerby just left me with a promotion. There's a whole fucking cluster there that's going on. Who's left? Bob. Bob would want to Bob would want to do a deal. I think Bob would want to do a deal because at the end of the day, he looks after his Top Rank. Unless Top Rank says, we're okay. We're just going to go stick with ESPN. But trust me, the advisors in these conversations, talking to Top Rank Promotions and PBC, you think I'm good the way I talk? Wait until you see these guys, how they talk.
Yeah.
Like they will make it worth it for each promoter to align themselves. Yeah.
Definitely. So it'll be an interesting few sort of months and maybe years ahead for the sport of boxing then. And Jay, is there anything else you want to add, bro?
No, brother. Thank you for having me, man. I'm glad that we got to get this out so quick, and hopefully fans will enjoy it.
Definitely, bro. Thank